45 minutes before the concert, absolute chaos was unfolding at Madison Square Garden's back entrance. Mike Harrison, the newly hired security guard, wanted to be perfect on his first day, and when he saw that strange-looking man approaching the door, he immediately sprang into action. "Step back, you can't come in this way," he said firmly. The man smiled. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, buddy." Mike didn't listen. He grabbed the man's arm and started pushing him out. That's when he heard someone screaming from behind. "Mike, no, that's Ozzy." But it was too late. He had already put his hands on Ozzy Osbourne, and what happened in the next 10 minutes would change Mike's life forever. Nobody at Madison Square Garden that December evening in 2019 could have predicted the comedy of errors that was about to unfold. Not the veteran stage crew who had seen everything. Not Sharon Osbourne, who was already dealing with a dozen other problems. And certainly not Ozzy himself, who just wanted to grab a quick coffee before the show. But sometimes the most memorable moments in rock history don't happen on stage. They happen in the most unexpected places, with the most unexpected people. Mike Harrison was 24 years old, fresh out of security training, and this was his first major event. He had spent the last 3 years working small venues, local clubs, and corporate events. Landing a gig at Madison Square Garden was huge. It was the kind of opportunity that could launch a real career in event security. That morning, Mike had arrived 2 hours early. He wanted to make a good impression on his supervisor, Tommy Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran who had seen it all. Tommy was old school, no nonsense, and had a reputation for not tolerating mistakes. "Listen up, kid," Tommy had told him during the briefing. "Tonight's a big night. Ozzy Osbourne. Sold-out show, 20,000 people. Your job is simple. Backstage entrance, door C. Nobody gets through without proper credentials. I don't care if they say they're the president. If they don't have the right pass, they don't get in. Got it?" Mike nodded eagerly. "Got it. No pass. No entry. Simple." Tommy looked at him seriously. "I mean it, Mike. We've had problems before with fans trying to sneak backstage. Some of them are pretty creative. They'll tell you they're with the band, their family, their whatever. Don't fall for it. Check the credentials every single time." Mike took his position at door C with a sense of pride. He had his clipboard with the authorized personnel list, his radio, and his game face on. The first few hours went smoothly. Crew members came and went, all with proper badges. Mike checked each one carefully, comparing photos to faces, verifying credentials. Nobody was getting past him without proper authorization. Around 6 p.m., the activity picked up. The opening act arrived. Their crew started bringing in equipment, and the backstage area became a hive of activity. Mike handled it all professionally, checking credentials, directing people to the right areas, maintaining order. Tommy stopped by around 6:30 to check on him. "How's it going?" "Good," Mike reported. "Everyone's been legit so far. No problems." Tommy nodded approvingly. "Keep it up. Show starts at 8:00, so things are going to get busier. Stay sharp." He paused, then added, "And remember, Mike, this is MSG. We have a reputation to maintain. Professional, firm, no exceptions." Mike felt a surge of confidence. He was doing well. His supervisor was impressed. This was going to be a great night. What Mike didn't know was that Ozzy Osbourne had a habit that drove his management team crazy. He liked to arrive at venues casually, without fanfare, often through whatever entrance was convenient. He didn't want a big production, didn't want security escorts or VIP treatment. He just wanted to walk in, get ready for the show, and do his job. Sharon had warned the venue about this multiple times. "My husband doesn't look like a rock star when he's not on stage," she had told the events coordinator. "Please make sure your security team knows he might come in through random entrances. He's done this 100 times before." But in the chaos of setting up a major concert, that message didn't quite make it to every single security guard, especially not the brand new one working his first shift at door C. At At 7:15 p.m., Ozzy Osbourne walked around the corner toward door C. He had just grabbed a coffee from a shop around the block, something he often did before shows to clear his head. He was wearing his usual offstage outfit, faded black jeans, an old Black Sabbath t-shirt from a tour in the 80s, his leather jacket and his signature round glasses. His hair was a bit messy from the December wind. He looked by any objective measure like a regular guy in his 70s who happened to like rock music. Mike saw him approaching and immediately went into alert mode. This guy definitely didn't look like he belonged backstage at a major concert. No credentials visible, no professional appearance, just wandering toward the door with a coffee cup. "Excuse me, sir," Mike called out, stepping directly into Ozzy's path. "This is a restricted entrance. Are you looking for something?" Ozzy stopped, a bit surprised. He was used to being recognized, especially at his own concerts. "Yeah, I'm just heading backstage," he said with his thick Birmingham accent. "Got a show to do in a bit." Mike's skepticism radar went off immediately. This was exactly what Tommy had warned him about. Fans trying to talk their way backstage with creative stories. "Right," Mike said, trying to sound professional but firm. "I'm going to need to see your credentials. Do you have a backstage pass?" Ozzy patted his pockets. The truth was, he never carried his own credentials. His team handled all that. He just showed up and people recognized him. "I don't have it on me," he admitted, "but I'm Ozzy Osbourne. I'm performing tonight." Mike had heard some creative lies before, but this one took the cake. This guy, who looked like somebody's grandfather, was claiming to be Ozzy Osbourne. "Sure you are," Mike said, unable to keep the sarcasm out of his voice. "And I'm Elvis Presley." "Listen, buddy, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but this entrance is for authorized personnel only." Ozzy couldn't help but smile. This was absurd. "Look, mate, I know this seems weird, but I really am Ozzy. If you just call someone from my crew—" "Sir," Mike interrupted, his voice getting firmer. Tommy's words echoed in his head. "Firm, professional, no exceptions. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The public entrance is around front. If you have a ticket, you can enter there." "I don't need a ticket," Ozzy said, his patience starting to wear thin. "I'm the one performing. Look, just call Sharon Osbourne. She'll sort this out." This guy was persistent. Mike had to give him that. "Sir, I'm asking you nicely. Please leave this area. If you don't, I'll have to escort you out." Ozzy set his coffee down on a nearby crate, realizing this was going to take a minute. "Listen, son, I appreciate you doing your job, but there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Ozzy Osbourne. This is my concert. I just went to get a coffee, and now I need to get back inside."
Mike had enough. He reached for his radio. "I need backup at door C. We have an individual refusing to leave a restricted area."
That's when things escalated. Ozzy, frustrated and running out of time, tried to walk past Mike. "I don't have time for this. I need to get inside." Mike moved to block him, and in that moment he made physical contact, putting his hand firmly on Ozzy's shoulder to stop him. "Sir, do not attempt to enter. I will use force if necessary." The absurdity of the situation was almost comical. Here was Mike Harrison, 24 years old, trying to physically prevent Ozzy Osbourne from entering his own concert venue. And Mike genuinely believed he was doing the right thing, protecting the venue from an overly enthusiastic fan. Two more security guards responded to Mike's radio call, arriving at the scene quickly. One of them, a guy named Carlos, who had worked at MSG for 5 years, took one look at the situation, and his eyes went wide. "Mike," Carlos said slowly, "do you know who that is?" "Some guy claiming to be Ozzy Osbourne," Mike replied, still holding Ozzy's shoulder. "He's trying to get backstage without credentials." Carlos's face went pale. "Mike, that is Ozzy Osbourne." The words hung in the air for a moment. Mike looked at Carlos, then back at Ozzy, then back at Carlos. "What?"
"That's Ozzy Osbourne," Carlos repeated. "The actual Ozzy Osbourne, whose concert this is, who we're all here to protect."
The realization hit Mike like a freight train. His hand was still on Ozzy's shoulder. He had just physically restrained the Prince of Darkness, the man whose concert they were securing, the legend legend whose name was on every poster in the building. Mike's hand dropped from Ozzy's shoulder like it had suddenly caught fire. His face went from professional security guard to absolute horror in about 2 seconds. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Mr. Osbourne. I didn't." Before Mike could finish his apology, Sharon Osbourne came bursting through the door. Having been alerted by someone on the crew, she had been dealing with a sound check issue when word reached her that her husband was being detained at a back entrance. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded, her voice carrying the full weight of 4 decades of managing rock tours and dealing with incompetence. "Why is my husband standing outside?" She spotted Mike, whose face was now the color of a tomato. "Are you the one who stopped him?"
"Mrs. Osbourne, I'm so sorry," Mike stammered. "I didn't recognize."
Sharon held up her hand. "You didn't recognize him? It's Ozzy Osbourne. At his own concert. At a venue that was specifically told he sometimes enters through random doors." Her voice was rising now, each word like a hammer. "How exactly does one fail to recognize one of the most famous musicians in the world at his own concert?" Tommy Rodriguez had also arrived, having heard the commotion on the radio. His face, when he saw the situation, told Mike everything he needed to know about his career prospects. "Mike," Tommy said, his voice dangerously quiet. "My office, now." But Ozzy, to everyone's surprise, started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, full-body laugh. "Oh, bloody hell," he said, wiping his eyes behind his glasses. "This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." Sharon turned to her husband, confused. "What's brilliant about this?" "Sharon, love, the kid was just doing his job," Ozzy said, still chuckling. "He was told not to let anyone through without proper credentials. I didn't have credentials. He didn't let me through. That's exactly what he was supposed to do."
Mike looked up, hardly daring to hope. "Really?"
"Well, you probably should have recognized me," Ozzy admitted, "but I get it. I don't look like much when I'm not on stage. Hell, half the time I don't recognize myself in the mirror." He picked up his coffee, which was probably cold by now. "What's your name, son?" "Mike Harrison, sir." "Mike, how long have you been working security?" "This is my first day at Madison Square Garden, sir. My first major venue." Ozzy nodded. "First day, and you get stuck with the Prince of Darkness trying to sneak in through the back door. That's bloody terrible luck." He turned to Tommy. "Is he in trouble?" Tommy looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Osbourne, he physically restrained you. That's a serious issue." "He thought I was some random bloke trying to get backstage," Ozzy countered, which, to be fair, is what I looked like. "If he had just let me waltz in because I said I was Ozzy Osbourne, you'd fire him for being too lax, wouldn't you?" Tommy didn't have an answer for that. Sharon was still not amused. "Ozzy, he put his hands on you." "Sharon, I tried to push past him first," Ozzy pointed out. "He was doing what he was trained to do. It's not his fault nobody told him I dress like a homeless person when I'm not working." Carlos and the other security guard were watching this exchange with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. It wasn't every day you saw Ozzy Osbourne defending the security guard who had just tried to kick him out of his own concert. "Tell you what, Mike," Ozzy said, "you seem like a good kid. Bit overzealous maybe, but that's not the worst quality in security. How about we forget this whole thing happened? You let me in now, I won't tell anyone you tried to tackle me, and we all move on with our lives." Mike could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You're not mad?" "Mad? I'm bloody delighted," Ozzy laughed. "Do you know how many times people just let random people backstage because they're too scared to ask questions? You actually did your job. That's refreshing." He paused. "Though next time maybe check if the scruffy old guy claiming to be me actually looks a bit like me before you try to wrestle him out." Sharon sighed, realizing her husband had made up his mind. "Fine, but Mike, next time someone claims to be a performer, you call me or someone from management. You don't physically remove them. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Crystal clear." Ozzy started toward the door, then stopped. "Actually, Mike, you doing anything after the show?" Mike blinked. "Sir? Come watch from side stage. Least I can do." after you gave me the best laugh I've had in months. Plus, you should probably see what I actually look like when I'm working.
Might help with recognition next time.
The story of what had happened spread through the venue's staff like wildfire. By the time Ozzy went on stage, every security guard, every stagehand, every vendor knew about Mike, the new guy who had tried to kick Ozzy Osbourne out of his own concert. Mike spent the next 30 minutes convinced he was going to be fired. Tommy had given him a long lecture about awareness and the importance of knowing who the performers are, but surprisingly, he hadn't fired him. Osbourne's right, Tommy had admitted grudgingly. You were doing what I told you to do. But for God's sake, Mike, learn to recognize rock legends. As showtime approached, a crew member found Mike and told him to follow her. She led him through the backstage maze to the side stage area, where he had a perfect view of the stage and the massive crowd beyond. The lights went down, the crowd erupted, and then Ozzy Osbourne walked onto that stage, and Mike finally understood what everyone else had known all along. This wasn't some random old guy in a faded t-shirt. This was a force of nature. This was the Prince of Darkness. The transformation was incredible. The casual, coffee-drinking man who had been so patient with Mike's mistake was gone. In his place was a rock god, commanding the stage with decades of experience, feeding off the crowd's energy, giving them everything they wanted and more. Mike watched in awe as Ozzy performed Bark at the Moon, Mr. Crowley, Crazy Train. The crowd knew every word, singing along with such passion that it gave Mike chills. This was what he had been protecting. This was why security mattered, not to keep people out, but to keep this magic safe. Halfway through the show, Ozzy walked to the front of the stage during a break between songs. You know, he said to the crowd, I've been doing this for over 50 years, and I've got to tell you, tonight something happened that's never happened before. The crowd cheered, not knowing what was coming. Before the show, I tried to come in through the back entrance, and your security guard, a young guy named Mike, he took one look at me and said, you can't come in here. I told him I was Ozzy Osbourne, and you know what he said? Ozzy paused for effect. He said, sure you are, and I'm Elvis Presley. The crowd erupted in laughter. Then he tried to physically remove me from the premises. Ozzy was laughing now too. Can you believe that? I got kicked out of my own concert before it even started? The laughter grew louder. People were taking out their phones, recording the story. But here's the thing, Ozzy continued, his tone becoming more serious. That kid was just doing his job. He was told not to let anyone through without proper credentials. I didn't have credentials, so he didn't let me through. And you know what? That's exactly right. That's exactly what he should have done. The crowd applauded, appreciating the point. Too often, people get so starstruck or so scared that they don't do their jobs properly. Mike did his job. He protected this venue, and I respect the hell out of that, even if it meant I had to drink cold coffee while we sorted it out. More applause and laughter. So, Mike, if you're watching back there, Ozzy pointed toward the side stage, where Mike was indeed watching, his face burning with embarrassment and pride. This next song's for you. It's called I Don't Know. The crowd roared, because clearly, Mike, you don't know what Ozzy Osbourne looks like. The band launched into the song, and Mike stood there, hardly able to believe what was happening. Not only had he not been fired, but Ozzy Osbourne had just told 20,000 people about him. And instead of mocking him, Ozzy had defended him. After the concert, as the crowd filed out and the crew began breaking down equipment, Mike was called back to Tommy's office. His stomach churned. Maybe Ozzy had been nice during the show, but now the real consequences were coming. But when he arrived, Tommy wasn't alone. Ozzy was there, along with Sharon and a few members of his management team.
Mike, Tommy said, Mr. and Mrs. Osbourne wanted to speak with you.
Mike stepped forward nervously. Listen, I really am sorry about earlier. I should have recognized you, and I definitely shouldn't have put my hands on you. Sharon spoke first. Mike, I'm going to be honest with you. My first instinct was to have you fired. Nobody touches my husband, especially not at his own concert. Mike's heart sank. But, she continued, Ozzy convinced me otherwise. He made a good point. You were doing exactly what you were trained to do. You didn't know who he was, and you didn't let someone without credentials enter a secure area. That shows integrity. Ozzy nodded. And more importantly, after you realized your mistake, you didn't make excuses. You owned it, apologized, and showed respect. That's the mark of a good person. So here's what's going to happen, Sharon said. We're not going to have you fired, but we are going to make sure that you and every other security person at every venue we play gets a packet with photos of Ozzy, the band members, and key crew. No more excuses about not recognizing people. That's more than fair, Mike said, relief flooding through him. But there's more, Ozzy added with a grin. How would you feel about doing security for the rest of this tour? Mike's eyes widened. What? We need good people, Sharon explained. People who take their jobs seriously, who don't get starstruck, who follow protocols. You've proven you're that kind of person. And after tonight's story goes viral, which it absolutely will, you're going to be famous as the security guard who kicked Ozzy out. Might as well put that fame to good use. I don't know what to say, Mike stammered.
Say yes, Ozzy suggested. Come work for us. Learn from the best security team in the business. And next time someone tries to sneak backstage, you'll actually know what rock stars look like.
Mike looked at Tommy, who nodded encouragingly. It's a good opportunity, kid. Better than anything MSG can offer you right now. And frankly, after tonight's story spreads, you're going to be too famous here anyway. Everyone's going to be telling the Mike and Ozzy story. Then yes, Mike said, hardly believing his luck. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Ozzy stood up and shook Mike's hand. Welcome to the team, mate. Fair warning though, rock and roll tours are insane. You'll see things that will make tonight's misunderstanding look normal. I can handle it, Mike said with newfound confidence. Good, Sharon said. Report to our head of security tomorrow. He'll get you sorted out with the details. She paused, then added with a slight smile, and Mike, learn to recognize my husband. I won't be this nice next time. By the next morning, the story had exploded online. Someone in the crowd had recorded Ozzy telling the story during the concert. The video had been shared on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and every other social media platform imaginable. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 10 million times. The headlines were everything from security guard kicks Ozzy out of his own concert to new guy has worst first day ever to Ozzy defends security guard who didn't recognize him. News outlets picked it up. Entertainment shows played the clip. Late night hosts made jokes about it. Jimmy Fallon did an entire bit where he dressed up as a confused security guard trying to kick various celebrities out of their own events. Mike's phone exploded with messages. Friends from high school, relatives he hadn't talked to in years, people he barely knew, all reaching out to ask if it was really him. His old security training school posted about him on their website. Our graduate makes headlines. But the response that meant the most came from the security community itself. Professional security forums were discussing the incident, and surprisingly, most of the conversation was positive. One veteran security professional posted, "Everyone's laughing at this kid, but let's be real, he did everything right. He was given a job, told to check credentials, and he didn't let someone through without them. Yeah, it turned out to be Ozzy, but the kid didn't know that. He should be commended, not mocked." Another added, "Too many security people get starstruck or make exceptions. This guy stuck to his training. That's exactly what you want in security." A security company owner even posted, "If Mike Harrison is looking for work after this, he's got a job with us. Anyone who takes the job that seriously is someone we want on our team." Of course, not all the attention was positive. Some people mocked him, made memes, called him stupid for not recognizing one of the most famous musicians in the world. But those comments were drowned out by support from people who understood that he had been put in an impossible situation and handled it the best he could. 3 days later, Mike arrived at the next tour stop in Boston. He was now officially part of Ozzy's security team, wearing the crew credentials he had been missing that night at Madison Square Garden. The irony wasn't lost on him. The head of security, a grizzled veteran named named Marcus greeted him with a grin. "So you're the famous Mike Harrison, the guy who tried to body slam the Prince of Darkness." "I didn't body slam him," Mike protested. "I just firmly prevented him from entering." Marcus laughed. "Listen, kid, you're going to hear about this for the rest of your career. Embrace it. It's actually a great story. And between you and me, you did the right thing. I've worked in this business for 30 years, and I've seen too many security breaches because someone got starstruck or made assumptions. You followed protocol. That's rare and valuable." Over the next few months, Mike learned the ins and outs of tour security from the best in the business. He traveled to dozens of cities, worked hundreds of hours, and became part of the tight-knit crew that kept Ozzy and the band safe. And everywhere they went, people knew him. "Are you the Mike?" they'd ask. "The one who didn't recognize Ozzy?" He'd smile and nod, no longer embarrassed by the story. It had become his calling card, proof that he took his job seriously.
Ozzy never let him forget it either. At random moments during tours, he'd spot Mike and shout, "Hey, Mike, am I allowed to be here? Or are you going to kick me out again?" The crew would laugh. Mike would roll his eyes, and everyone would go about their business. 6 months into the tour, during a show in Los Angeles, Ozzy brought Mike on stage during the encore. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I want you to meet someone very special. This is Mike Harrison, my head of personal security. Some of you might remember the story about how we met." The crowd roared with recognition. "Mike here taught me an important lesson," Ozzy continued. "He taught me that integrity matters more than recognition. He taught me that doing your job right is more important than making exceptions. And he taught me that I really need to dress better when I'm not on stage." The crowd laughed and applauded. "But most importantly, he reminds me every day that real respect isn't automatic. It's earned." Mike didn't respect me because I'm Ozzy Osbourne. He respected the rules, respected his job, and respected the venue he was protecting. And that's worth more than any amount of fame. Mike stood on that stage, overwhelmed by the moment. 6 months ago, he had been a rookie security guard making minimum wage at small venues. Now he was on stage at the Staples Center with a rock legend, being applauded by thousands of people. "So here's to Mike." Ozzy raised his water bottle in a toast. "The only man brave enough, or stupid enough, depending on how you look at it, to try to kick me out of my own concert. May we all have that kind of courage to do our jobs right, no matter what." The story of Mike and Ozzy became more than just a funny anecdote. It became a teaching moment about integrity, about the importance of doing your job even when it's uncomfortable, and about having the grace to admit when you're wrong. Security training programs started using it as a case study. Business schools discussed it in classes about workplace ethics. And somewhere in Birmingham, England, a young kid working security at a small club saw the video and thought, maybe I should stick with this. If Mike Harrison can go from trying to kick out Ozzy to working for him, anything's possible. Today, Mike Harrison is still working in security, having built a successful career in the industry. He's protected countless artists, worked major events around the world, and earned a reputation as someone who takes his job seriously without taking himself too seriously. And on his office wall hangs a framed photo from that first night at Madison Square Garden. Ozzy on stage, pointing towards side stage, where Mike stands watching, still not quite believing what's happening. Below the photo is a handwritten note from Ozzy. "To Mike, the only man who ever successfully kept me out of my own concert. Thanks for reminding me what integrity looks like. Keep doing your job right." Ozzy, if this story made you laugh, if it reminded you that mistakes can turn into opportunities, or if it showed you that doing the right thing matters even when it's difficult, share it, because somewhere out there someone is having their worst day at work, convinced they've ruined everything, and maybe knowing that Mike Harrison went from his most embarrassing moment to his biggest opportunity will give them hope. After all, if you can survive trying to kick Ozzy Osbourne out of his own concert, you can survive anything.